Well, hello, that's me again. Today is September 19th, 2024, and looks like that we are heading for the big time combat, if you wish, in the north of Israel, in Lebanon. And, well, there is a lot of speculation now going around with this explosion of the pagers, which was conducted by Israelis, and some people say that they, and you can look it up, it's all over the internet, that they actually did their, fake company, the front, so to speak, which allowed them to place those explosives and to essentially target the Hezbollah people. Sadly, there's, there are other people who suffered or just have been killed, like this 9-year-old girl. You can look it up at New York Times. Even New York Times admits that. So, I mean, and this is just the part of the so-called operation. Obviously, it's in essence, it's terrorism, clear and simple. But then again, Mr. Netanyahu needs to stay in power, and because of that, he will do anything, including the unleashing the war in the region. And looks like we're about to get into this situation. Will this affect Israel, whose economy essentially is a bank now? And yeah, I guess so. And if they couldn't handle for the, well, now a year essentially since this, well, I will not mince words, it was a tragedy in many respects, October 7, and they still couldn't get Hamas. And things continue. They continue to essentially commit war crimes against the population, Palestinian population there. Now they go for Lebanon and Hezbollah. Well, I don't think so. They will be very much successful on that issue. But again, that's me. I could be wrong. And I want to constantly stress that I do not know the region in regards to Israel. I know what they are. I mean, obviously, as my good friend Larry Johnson wrote, that in terms of military, they are arrogant. It's hubris. They believe that they, kill Arab civilian population, that somehow they are really great fighters. They are not. Obviously, modern Israeli Defense Force is nowhere near their morale and training of the Israeli Defense Force of the 1967 and 1973. And even in 1973, there was oh my gosh, they had a bloody nose, despite the fact that they were fighting their forces, Arab forces, which I've been on record for so many times about this. There are huge issues have been at that time with Arab armed forces. I know it firsthand, and it's a long story, but long story short, there are a number of the things written about this issue. Arabs did improve, obviously, in terms of understanding of the war and war fighting, and especially combined arms, or let's say something approaching combined arms. So, and Hezbollah is definitely well-trained force, well-equipped, unlike it is the case with Hamas. So, yeah, and there are plenty of courageous people in there, too, who are ready to sacrifice the most dearest thing, their lives, fighting Israelis. And that sits really not well for Israeli Defense Force, or Tzahal as they call it, because they will sustain very serious losses. And again, the only thing they are good at is to basically bomb defenseless population. That's pretty much what they do. But we'll see. So it's time will show, and of course, obviously, this is going to be dominating the news. But let's start with something which is being pushed a little bit further away from our attention, because obviously, what is happening in Ukraine, or former Ukraine, if you wish, is definitely a complete military catastrophe. Let's start with the armed forces of Ukraine losses. And as you can see yourself, it's for today, 19th of September. It's a lag of about 12 hours. So what we have here, again, we're significantly above 2,000 KIAs. Now we have the issue of, as you saw yourself in the beginning, yet another Leopard 2 have been annihilated. Now they won't send the Leopard 1s, which are actually, children toys. They will not survive more modern battlefield, but yeah, just for today, already 4 tanks and APCs, 28 armored vehicles, 60 artillery mortars. So yeah, you put this together, it's what, 82 pieces, oh no, 92, pardon me, 92 pieces of the vehicles, armored and all kinds of other things, and units of the artillery and mortars, and yeah, that's another brigade is gone. And if anybody wants to know what is happening, for example, in Kursk, this is today, let me see, is it today or yesterday? Yesterday. So here we have now, from yesterday, confirmed, and these are Russian estimates, because they are very conservative. Reality, of course, is much grimmer for all those forces, including those so-called volunteers. Some of them are just pure simple terrorists, and here we have that Russian Ministry of Defense estimated the losses of the armed forces of Ukraine during the hostilities in the Kursk region. So what we have, as they report yesterday, 14,600 servicemen, 121 tanks, 28 MLRS launchers. My gosh, that was a really good harvest on that. Announced on Wednesday, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. So, and apart from there were also 92 armored personnel carriers, 758 armored combat vehicles, 457 vehicles. So what you observing here, for people to, give you a little bit of the perspective, so to speak, or a reference point, we are talking about full U.S. Army division consisted of the 3 brigade combat teams. Usually brigade combat teams runs around, 4,500, 5,000. These are actually forces which actually fight. Yeah, wiped out. Period. Doesn't exist. So, well, that's pretty much what happens when you have planners from London, and some people say that it's primarily United States. Possible. It was the mix of the NATO, when they really try to plan things which they really cannot plan. They don't have understanding of the modern war, and they really think that they can, outplay Russians or Russian general staff in terms of their, all kinds of the ruses. They can't. I mean, again, they might get, some lucky shot, for example, like happened in the town of Toropets, where they have been able to hit this couple of the buildings, and even that was primarily burning and falling, shut down UAV, which detonated couple of the buildings. Naturally, they started moving people out of the area there, but people have to understand, arsenals are not on the surface. Believe me, I've been to arsenals many times. They are all on the ground. What have been hit, probably some kind of the immediate, distribution center, which contains some explosives and some ammo, but arsenal is not damaged itself. So it's pretty much, that's what it is. But let's talk to people who really are there, and we will talk about the actually legendary commander. He's battalion commander in the Akhmat force, and so his call sign is Aid. Fighter Hades. I don't know why the machine translation Hades. I don't know why Hades. Aid. He's Aid. So, and Russian forces, he talks about yesterday about the Russian forces defeated a number of brigades of the armed forces of Ukraine, a unit of the Ukrainian Special Operation Forces, and a detachment of the American PMC Forward private military company. Yes, there are a number of the, I have to, just sadly, American corpses there, which are, KIAs. And so here's Aid, who is a legendary guy. I mean, as you can say yourself, he was talking about this before the defense ministry finally revealed those estimates that say they lost several thousand, several hundred equipment alone. The losses are huge, but they are importing, actually transferring and importing and importing. That means transferring and transferring and transferring those reserves which have been slaughtered, and now they really do not have that much in terms of their armored vehicles and any kind of vehicles transportation which is critical for any kind of the operations. And this is Kursk alone. And as you saw yourself in the beginning, this is Leopard 2. I mean, German tanks do not do well on Russian soil. Okay, how many times to explain this to these morons from Berlin and this Bundeswehr guys, because they don't understand what they're doing. But yeah, sure. So, and it continues. We have already bled dry, destroyed most of the 61st Brigade, the 80th Brigade, the 82nd Brigade. Well, 82nd Brigade, as you probably remember, I already told you in the last video that what they do, because they need to create this propaganda thing to sell it to the imbeciles in the Western media, that actually the 82nd Brigade doesn't really exist anymore. What they do, they call those all kinds of the battalions or companies which are not 82nd Brigade, and they are numbered for their combat control reasons. They are normal numbers, like 150th, motor rifle company or something like that. The moment they cross, if they are able to cross their basically their one-way ticket towards the destruction into Kursk, they suddenly change all those numbers to as units on or 82nd Brigade. So there you go, it's fake as always. So in here, it also tells that they brought in the 95th Brigade, we destroyed it too. So I don't know why they called him Hades or Hate, but he's Aid. And so he also continues explaining to this that Special forces have entered the private, company forward. The American private company forward observation group has entered. This is not some foreign legion of Georgians lost at the turn. It's a really screwed up, basically translation. But yeah, so here they talk about that. Yeah, these American professionals, military trained, they actually blooded them into their, utter submission, and they just ran away. They fled. According to the commander, the newly established forces also suffered significant losses. And so this is just anecdotal, albeit very important thing. And then suddenly we have, no less than this, than CNN saying that, 2 days ago, they lament, whatever, Natasha Bertrand, Ren Lieberman, whatever the names of those guys. So they say U.S. military aid packages to Ukraine shrink amid concerns over Pentagon stockpiles. Well, yes, read my lips. I want to specifically state it again. The question is not about fighting Ukraine. Ukraine as such doesn't exist. It's a virtual state, and it is a virtual army, which is fully provided for by the West. It is about the militarization of NATO and especially United States. And so they talk about these people from CNN. You see, I'm using only, American sources, not to be, accused that I am biased and I provide only from Russian sources. Here's American source. So it is lying source, but nonetheless, the shift comes amid concerns about U.S. military readiness being impacted as U.S. arms manufacturers play catch-up to the huge demand created by the war against Russia. I will have to really make another statement about the readiness of the U.S. Army, which is going to require probably another book written about this. But CNN continues, and they actually describe that Ukraine is feeling the impact of the inventory storages, according to the President Vladimir Zelensky. So he complains and he will demand again from Biden something, as you can see yourself on this picture, when they meet in the United Nations fairly soon. So, but since then, however, the value of each military aid package to Ukraine has been significantly smaller, with none exceeding 400 million, and most in the 125 million to 215 million range. In 2022 and 2023, the Pentagon regularly announced packages worth between 600 million to 800 million, with the highest being almost $3 billion in January 2023. And they talk about, American officials, that that the administration was unable to draw supplies from Defense Department stockpiles for the first 4 months of the year because Congress delayed in approving supplemental funding. The officials also said the U.S. is trying not to send Ukraine too much at once. Well, let me translate it for you in normal human language. The question is not supplemental funding. The question here is very simple, because United States military-industrial complex is incapable of restocking basically those, well, stocks, if you wish. And what can I say? But if that hasn't been enough, and we talk about this, basically implosion of this thing, we now have the wonderful Brian Berlevich was speaking to Danny yesterday. He makes some great points about why NATO is already defeated. Essentially, it's inevitable. And Brian explains that what is the escalation dominance, and they don't understand that what Russia is doing. Not Danny, Danny and Brian. Brian actually understands what is happening, and he makes some very excellent, astute observations about the strategic approach to this whole situation, because Ukraine is just but one theater of operation for Russians, and the other one is the ASEAN 2024, with a huge emphasis on Pacific theater of operation was made there, explains why Russia is fighting essentially everywhere, and the NATO is failing everywhere. And here is my good friends, Alex and Alexander, explaining why the UK wants US directly involved in Ukraine conflict. And he's talking about the obsession of the Starmer, this, lowly life, lawyer. Well, not Alexander. Alexander is excellent. But, I mean, Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, he's a chihuahua. I mean, he's nobody. He doesn't understand war, but he is obsessed with Russia. And these are rumors. But they are very well grounded rumors. When one looks at why British are going bananas, their pathetic elite, which it is, and there is information which is now begin to circulate, and again, don't quote me on that. I'm just sharing with you with the rumor which has a good level of probability to be true. That actually the SAS, well, Special Air Service, well, the only force which actually represents any kind of fighting force, so to speak, primarily killing civilians, it's Special Forces of United Kingdom. They love to, talk about them, how great they are. They did meet actually Russian paratroopers in Gostomel at the start of when there was this demonstration of force action when Russians penetrated Gostomel airport. And evidently it ended up really badly for SAS. They got their nose bloodied there because, well, they evidently for the first time they encountered real armed force and real, well, if you want to deal with the Russian paratroop division special detachments, that's not a good experience, believe me, for anybody, for the top of the top, all those, best SEALs, what have you, Rangers or whatever. So, yeah. And so they got their, well, basically, their ass handed to them. And that evidently creates a lot of hostility, well, especially for the country, which is basically, it's irrelevant, so these morons in London still think that they matter. They don't. But this is part of the explanation why they're driven, almost desperate, trying to kill as many Russians as they can, including civilians, because they are not capable of really fighting the real war in London. But this is part of the issue, evidently. But as I already stated, I want to stress, this is not confirmed yet, but there is a higher level of probability that this being not a rumor. How it will play out, if it plays out and Russians eventually present the case on that, I will talk about it. Obviously, you will never hear this from NATO people because, yeah, they don't like to lose. They don't even know how to lose. They don't have honor, integrity, what have you. So, and if that hasn't been enough, now we have another thing, which is absolutely mind-boggling. And this is what can I say? You know what? This tells you why, for example, they're so desperate. You see, as this guy, this guy personally executed 3 Russian POWs, and he's talking about this is what Pentagon in London plans. That explains to you why they're so desperate, and they actually hate Russian guts. They probably would kill, anybody, from Russia. And so, before entering course, he's talking to Russian Defense Ministry yesterday that before we were gathered and told we need to shoot the train in order to Russia declared war on Ukraine officially. A civilian train, yes, passenger train. We had 2 machine guns, RPGs, one-time disposable grenade launchers. I don't know why they explain it, but yeah, everybody knows what RPG is. And so he explains it, but the train never came. And because Russians obviously have their own, intelligence resources. But that's what was the idea. This is the, not false flag, this is plain simple terrorism. This is what they plan in Pentagon and in London. They're primarily planning about terrorism. They love to kill civilians, so, and that was the plan. They wanted to, again, elicit some kind of response from Russia, which is completely, emotional and absolutely irrational. No, they are children. They are amateurs compared to Russian general staff and Russian military political leadership. So, and that has been proven time over time. And that is why they're becoming hysterical. And if that hasn't been enough, here is the one of the major indication or indicators of to what degree of imbecility those people lowered themselves, because this is all about virtual world. There's nothing which is going on for them. And here it is, Reuters, no less. Suddenly Reuters explains that, oh my gosh, U.S. strategy for anti-ship weapons to counter China. Plentiful, mobile, deadly. I don't know why they say deadly, because I will explain to you why this is nothing but sheer propaganda by the people who do not understand modern warfare. As you can see yourself, this was announced 3 days ago. And look at this. U.S. Air Force in test struck ship with quick-sink weapon. Budget documents outline U.S. plan for missile purchases. Okay, what is this missile? What is this quick sink? Okay, let's go take a look of what this quick sink. So they talking about this quick sink weapon, an inexpensive and potentially plentiful bomb equipped with a low-cost GPS guidance kit and a seeker that can track moving targets. The U.S. Air Force used B-2 stealth bomber during a test last month in the Gulf of Mexico to strike a target ship with quick sink. Okay, quick sink is a JDAM with the seeker. But look at this. These people, that's their strategy. China will still have a large advantage in sheer numbers of anti-ship missiles, according to experts, and can base them on its home territory. But increasing U.S. production of quick sink would narrow that gap by putting China's 370 or so warships at more risk during any future conflict than they have faced since before Beijing learned to into modernization of its military in 1990s. Okay, do you remember, the idiocracy thing when people, this police destroys the car? So that's pretty much it. That's what it is. So what is QuickSync? Okay, here's QuickSync. It's JDAM with Seeker. And so they talk about that. Oh my God, they explode this empty cargo vessel. Hooray, we killed it. So we are now, just rulers. We close the gap, So they did it, in defenseless cargo vessel. Sure, impressive. So they talk about how they good about this. But here's the problem. And this is what the most unbelievable thing. And as you can see yourself, to explain to you what the QuickSync and JDAM is, the JDAM's range is actually 24 miles. 24 miles, this is roughly 40 plus kilometers range. Here are the basically, general ranges of the air defense complexes, which especially of the, even if we remove for aerodynamic purposes the S-300, S-400, you can see that the range for the aerodynamic targets for these complexes is ranging anywhere between 160 to 400 kilometers. And if you take a look attentively, let me explain what it means. It means that in order to launch 40-kilometer range, this QUICKSINKed thingy, all those aircraft, they have to enter deep into the air defense territory of the, let's say, People's Liberation Army Navy. They have this funny name about their navies for China. And so let's take a look. What do we have? Okay, hey, listen, I'm just giving you the basically insight to all that. If you take a look, for example, at S-350, which is, for example, the mainstay of the Russian Redoubt air defense system, as you can see yourself, the M96E2 has the range of 120 kilometers. It's 3 times the range, so in order for them to launch, for example, against any Admiral Gorshkov class or Project 2385 Zircon carriers, they need to enter very deep. Well, they will be intercepted and killed. Any kind of aerodynamic target. Well, it's simple as that. But, okay, let's go to the Chinese. As you can see yourself, this is the Type 52 destroyer. While one of them was participating in the actually Okean 24. As you can see yourself, it has a lot of VLS, vertical launch systems. Chinese have their own standard for that. And China has different variations of these ships, something on the order of 40, 25 of the latest, and so yeah, it's a lot. Then you have another 8 already operational, and I believe 12 more are being constructed. Mighty Type 55 has a tremendous number of the VLS, and all of them, they carry, they carry this thing. This thing is called, of course, HQ9. There are also, all kinds of the versions of these HQ9s. So, and they is a derivative of the Russian S-300. Chinese kind of did their own thing there. And as you can see yourself, the reason I use Wiki, because it is correct. So it has operational range for HQ 920 kilometers and 250 kilometers for HQ 9B. Yeah, and when you think that basically for this air defense complex alone, for example, Type 55, it carries probably on the order of 60 cells just dedicated to all kinds of air defense missiles. They outrange this JDAM thing called QUICKSINKed, completely, several times over. So how do you going to use it? How are you going to close this gap? And of course, we have to keep in mind that in terms of the anti-shipping missiles, United States Navy is not even in the same universe with the plan, let alone with Russians. Because obviously the only thing they really have in terms of the normal anti-shipping missile is a venerable good old Harpoon, which has an extended range up to 500 kilometers. They extended it to from 250. It is Mach 0.8 subsonic missile. It still could be very dangerous, obviously, in the salvo. But the problem is it has nothing to do with QUICKSINKed. They think that somehow the U.S. Navy's aircraft carriers will be able to, take off those, F-18s, armed with those things. Good luck, good luck entering the air defense zones of those ships and not being able to launch anything in terms of this QUICKSINKed. They will have JASSMs or LRASM, long-range anti-shipping missile, which evidently, well, for some reason they want to they do not promote it too much. It's basically JASSM with the appropriate seeker, and it's about 400 kilometer range. It's a much better chance to do anything about anything than this QUICKSINKed. So QUICKSINKed is probably a fraud. It's basically the money laundering scheme, because obviously for the real war it doesn't work. But you know what? Raytheon does it. Whatever. Look it up. So this is the new word in strategy, or how they call it, because obviously it's complete tactical and operational imbecility if anybody thinks, especially against the background that Chinese have now their own 3 aircraft carriers. Obviously, you know what, it's not easy to launch those quick sinks. I don't think so anybody gets anywhere near 120-kilometer range towards any kind of their, plan, Chinese Navy's task groups. So, but you know what? People, the hope dies last, Plus, again, some people, they, shareholders, they need their dividends. They want their payouts, So there you go. And when you look at that, you have to scratch your head. Is it really that bad? It is that bad. It is horrible. What we observe here is some kind of the convulsions with people just basically presenting to us with the knee-jerk reactions, and do something modus operandi, because obviously, as I already stated, and you can quote me on that, United States and NATO, they lost the arms race, period, across the board. Anybody who listens to any BS about the nuclear weapons on the NATO side, is BS primarily. So, and in terms of delivery system, I constantly make this point. It's not even fair anymore. So, and that's what I wanted to tell you today about all that. And what can I say? Just those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. And you know what? Have a nice rest of the week. And I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.